Technical difficulties, we're back.
It's your boy. We got this week in the NFL for week 3. We're going to go through the games, kind of talk about them. Starting with the Thursday night game, we had the Panthers and the Texans. Tyrod Taylor was injured, so Sam Darnold took full advantage, throwing 304 yards. Hubbard also had a pretty good game running-wise for them. DJ Moore and Brandon Clark had a good little wide receiver battle, and the State Farm. Bro, congrats to the Panthers, 3-0 start. That's the first time they've done that in a while. It's got to be. We're going to get into Sunday's games. We're starting with the Vikings and the Seahawks. The Vikings get their first win of the year, win by 13. Their defense was on fire, and so was Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins threw for 323 yards and 3 touchdowns. Russell Wilson also had a good game, pretty decent game, with 298 yards and a touchdown. Rushing-wise, Alexander Mattison had 112 yards, and Chris Carson also competed as well with 80 yards and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson and DK Metcalf had a nice little receiving battle. DK had 107 for a touchdown. Jefferson had 118 for a touchdown. So that was that game. Buccaneers and Rams. The Rams remain undefeated. They dethroned the Buccaneers of the undefeated spot. Matthew Stafford killing it once again, as always. A good start to his season. He had 343 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Tom Brady had 432 for a touchdown. He just couldn't get in the end zone enough. Sony Michel had a good game against his former QB Tom Brady, 67 yards rushing. Mike Evans had a good receiving game with 106 yards, and Deshaun Jackson, incredible game, 3 receptions for 120 yards and a touchdown. Maybe the Philadelphia D-Jax is finally back. Dolphins and Raiders, I was watching this game. This was a really good game. I thought the Dolphins almost deserved the win because they came back down 8 and took it to overtime, but again, Derek Carr wins the day for the 3rd straight time to start the year. Carlson's field goal. Derek Carr, 386 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception, but Brissett also had a pretty good game with 215 yards. Peyton Barber had a career day with 111 rushing yards and a touchdown, and Gaskin had a solid 65 yards. On the receiving side, Gesicki for the Dolphins had 86 yards, and Edwards had 86 yards, and Edwards had 89 yards. Good battle there, but the Raiders pull it out. Good game for David Carr. He proves that he should definitely be in the running for MVP this year. Jets and Broncos is the next game. The Broncos absolutely shut out the Jets. Another bad start to a season from the Jets. And the Broncos are 3-0. Who would have guessed after Peyton Manning left that we'd ever see that for the next 5 years, really? Wilson, another bad game for him, but Teddy Bridgewater had 235 yards. Melvin Gordon had 61 yards for a touchdown, and Patrick had a 98-yard receiving gain off of 5 receptions. So congratulations to the Broncos for starting off 3-0, one of the best starts in a long time, and obviously the Jets are going to be the Jets. So let's move on to the Cardinals and Jaguars. The woes continue. There was a kick 6, missed the field goal, and he returned it for a touchdown in the first half, and the Cardinals came back and with a pick 6. So there was a lot of a lot of special teams and defensive plays in this game. Kyler Murray had 316 yards, no touchdowns, but an interception. Lawrence, 219 for a touchdown and 2 interceptions. Jerome, I think that's his name, Jerome Robinson, or maybe not. He had 88 yards for a touchdown. A.J. Green had a great game with 112 receiving yards. Marvin Jones had a solid game, 62 yards off of 6 receptions. That's worth noting. But yeah, Cardinals are another undefeated team, which I'm not surprised about. They got some talent this year. Next, we're going to go to the Bengals and the Steelers. The Bengals are having a great start to their season. They're starting off 2-1. Steelers, on the other hand, are dealing with an aging Ben Roethlisberger. They're down 1-2. Joe Burrow, great game for him, touchdowns-wise. I mean, he only had 172 yards, but 3 touchdowns. Ben Roethlisberger did have 318 yards, but threw 2 picks. Joe Mixon, once again, catering to his fantasy users with 90 yards rushing. And Najee Harris was actually the leading receiver for the Steelers, putting up 102 receiving yards and 40 rushing yards. So a pretty good game for Najee Harris. A lot of people are saying he's a bust, but he's starting to prove that wrong. Jamar Chase, obviously 65 yards and 2 touchdowns. He would be the one to win it. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, a great LSU duo. Let's move on to the next game, Falcons and Giants. A very low-scoring one, but what's his name? It's like Young Ho Koo. They're like Asian kicker. He won it for them. Both the quarterbacks had a pretty decent days. Matt Ryan had 243 yards for 2 touchdowns. Daniel Jones had 266 yards. Davis had 50 yards rushing, and Saquon had 51 and a touchdown. So not a terrible day for Saquon there. Cordell Patterson putting up 82 receiving yards for the Falcons. He's back to playing pretty good, and Kenny Golladay had 64 yards for the Giants. It's crazy to see all these receivers playing on different teams, like Marvin Jones with the Jaguars. But anyways, we will move to the next game, where is it at? Okay, the next game, Saints and Patriots. I guess Jameis Winston kind of proving that he's not a fluke, I guess. I mean, he had a really good first game, bad second game, and came back and had a good week 3, 2 touchdowns. Mac Jones, 3 interceptions. I mean, man, Jameis Winston just doesn't get a lot of passing yards. He gets a lot of touchdowns for the passing yards. He has 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, he had the better rating. Mac Jones threw the ball 51 times, which is crazy. 370 yards for a touchdown and 3 picks, so it's a rough day for him. Alvin Kamara, he's going to kill it. 89 yards rushing there. Kendrick Bourne, I think that's his name. He used to play on the Niners. He had 96 yards for a touchdown, so that's a pretty good day for him. Next is Chargers and Chiefs. Chiefs 1-2 start, very rough start to the year. They're at the bottom of their division for the first time in who knows how long. Very turnover prone this game. 2 interceptions from Mahomes, a couple fumbles. Justin Herbert, absolutely amazing day. 281 yards and 4 touchdowns. Mahomes did have 3 touchdowns with 2 interceptions and 260 yards. Edwards-Helaire had 100 yards rushing, but Eckler's 55 ended up helping them win. Mike Williams, great day for him, 122 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Travis Kelce was the leading receiver for the Chiefs with 104 yards. Mike Williams had a really good game. Next is Colts and Titans. It looked like the Colts were starting to come back in the game, but they remain winless. They're 0-3, and the Titans improve above 500. Ryan Tannehill, 3 touchdowns. Wentz, he threw 194 yards, but that's about it. Tannehill threw for 197 and also had 3 touchdowns, but 2 picks, but, it is what it is. You get the win, whatever. Derrick Henry with 113 rushing yards. He's been under the radar. Very good performances recently that not a lot of people have been taking notice. Jonathan Taylor, an emerging star on the ground, 64 yards rushing there. This Westbrook guy for the Titans, he had 53 yards and a touchdown, and Pittman had 68 yards. So not crazy receiving numbers there, but, they help their teams. Ravens and Lions, wow, what a legendary game winner for Justin Tucker, just proving that he's a Hall of Fame kicker. 66-yard game-winning field goal. I think that's the most for a game-winning field goal in history. I don't know why they were that behind in the first place, but hey, you gotta love to have a kicker like Justin Tucker. Not a lot of people have a kicker as good as him. Matter of fact, he's probably the best kicker in the league. Lamar Jackson had 287 yards, a touchdown, and interception. Not bad from him. Jared Goff, I'd say, had the slightly better game consistently-wise. He was 22 for 30 for 217 yards. And once again, Lamar Jackson is the leading runner for the Ravens, putting up 58 yards through 7 carries. And DeAndre Swift had a solid game with 47 yards and a touchdown. Mark Andrews, great receiving day for him. He had 109 yards. Raymond for Detroit with a solid 68 yards. That was a good game. I mean, the Lions have been putting up good fights this year. They're just getting unlucky. They haven't won a game yet, but they've had a lot of close ones. Bears and Browns. Justin Fields gets his shot at it, and I looked at a graphic that said he only had like a second per play to throw the ball, so it's really more of an alignment issue than an issue with him. I mean, he only had 68 yards off the 6 for 20, but he could hardly get the ball to an open receiver because he was getting rushed a lot. And I'm pretty sure Myles Garrett had like an insane game. I'm trying to find that, but we'll talk about this first. Baker Mayfield had 246 yards and a touchdown. Okay, I'm back. All right. Garrett had 7 total tackles, 4.5 sacks. Crazy game, comparable to the Chandler Jones game we had in week 1 or week 2. I'm not going to say too much more about that game. Bills and Washington. Bills absolutely destroy Washington. I mean, Taylor Heineke, he didn't play terrible. He had 212 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. But Josh Allen, one of the best QB performances we've had all year, 358 yards and 4 touchdowns. Zach Moss, their running back, had 60 yards. Antonio Gibson had an off week, I would say. Cole Beasley was the leading receiver for the Bills with 98 yards. And Antonio Gibson, I mean, I guess he did make up for his bad running game with a 73-yard touchdown receiving, but very dominant game for the Bills, 2-1. And let's talk about the Sunday night game with Green Bay and San Francisco. I actually forgot to wear my jersey, but whatever. Game-winning kick for Crosby. I mean, I was kind of doubtful, but then again, he's made a lot of kicks like that in his career, and he's been really consistent over the past years, which is something you wouldn't expect from a kicker that old. But a really good game overall. I mean, our defense is still kind of struggling. We shouldn't allow 28 points. I mean, there's got to be something to work on with like the coordinator and stuff like that, but we still ended up with the win. I can't complain. They left Rodgers with 37 seconds on the clock, and I mean, if you give him more than 25 seconds, it's pretty much over if it's a one-possession game. 261 yards, 2 touchdowns. Garoppolo played decent, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. A lot of officiating issues with this game. A lot of missed PIs. We've had those all year, though. That's something they definitely need to work on in the referee system. Aaron Jones, 82 yards for a touchdown. Sermon, I mean, they tried to put a little trust in him, but he didn't do much for them. Devontae Adams, it looked like he had a concussion after getting a helmet-to-helmet, but he ended up having 132 yards and a touchdown, which is crazy. He went right back on the field and finished the game. Kittle, obviously, I mean, he torches the Packers pretty much every time we play them. He had 92 yards, but I mean, we won, so I can't complain. And now last game is tonight's game, the Eagles and the Cowboys. Cowboys absolutely dominates. They put up 41. Cowboys. This is the first home game for Dak Prescott since he had that fatal ankle injury last year. Really good games for the quarterbacks. I mean, Hurts did throw 2 picks, but he had 326 yards and 2 touchdowns, so I guess that's something to note. Dak Prescott, though, 21 for 26, 238 yards and 3 touchdowns. Very good performance. And Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, he's back to beast mode form, 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Great game for him. I'm sure the Cowboys fans are excited for that. Pretty decent receivers. Dallas Goedert picked up 66 yards for the Eagles, and Schultz. It was pretty much a tight end battle. Schultz put up 80 yards and 2 touchdowns, so that's pretty much it. Yeah, I'll see you guys next week for this, and obviously I'll try to post daily without anything I find to do.